Picture this. You wake up tomorrow morning and your smartphone doesn't work. Your GPS can't find satellites. Nuclear power plants across the world shut down. The entire internet collapses. Lasers stop functioning. Even the simple act of measuring time becomes impossibly complex. What could cause such a catastrophic breakdown of modern civilization? The absence of one man's mind, a man with wild hair and a mustache, who spent his days scribbling equations that most people couldn't even pronounce, let alone understand. His name was Albert Einstein, and if he had never been born, the world you know today wouldn't exist. But here's the terrifying question that keeps scientists awake at night. What if Einstein's discoveries were so far ahead of their time that without him, humanity might still be stumbling in the scientific dark ages? What if the man who unlocked the secrets of space, time, and the very fabric of reality was our species' one shot at understanding the universe? Tonight, we're about to discover just how close we came to never having Einstein at all, and what that would have meant for every single one of us. March 14th, 1879, Ulm, Germany. Hermann and Pauline Einstein welcomed their first child into the world. But this isn't the triumphant birth of a destined genius. This is a near disaster that almost changed the course of human history forever. The baby's head is so abnormally large and misshapen that the attending physician warns the parents their son might be severely mentally disabled. His grandmother takes one look at the infant and declares, "Much too fat, much too fat." Young Albert doesn't speak until he's nearly 4 years old, leading his parents to fear he might be mute. But here's where history gets truly unsettling. What if those early concerns had been correct? What if Einstein's parents, overwhelmed by what they perceived as his developmental delays, had made different choices? In the 1880s, children with perceived mental disabilities were often institutionalized, hidden away from society. Their potential buried forever. Einstein himself would later joke that he was a late talker because he wanted to get it right the first time. But imagine if those critical early years had gone differently. Imagine if the boy who would revolutionize our understanding of reality had been written off as slow, locked away, his magnificent mind never given the chance to bloom. The threads of history are more fragile than we dare to admit, and Einstein's story almost ended before it truly began. By age 16, Einstein had already begun questioning the very nature of light and time. But here's what most people don't know. He was also failing his classes, clashing with authoritarian teachers, and desperately struggling to find his place in the world. In 1895, Einstein attempted to enter the prestigious Swiss Federal Polytechnic a year early. He failed the entrance exam spectacularly, particularly in languages and non-scientific subjects. For a moment, the future of physics hung in the balance. What if Einstein had given up? What if he had listened to the teachers who told him he wasn't cut out for academic work? Instead, he spent an additional year at a preparatory school, finally gaining admission to the Polytechnic in 1896. But even then, his professors considered him lazy and impertinent. One instructor, Heinrich Weber, told him, "You're a smart boy, Einstein, but you have one great fault. You do not let yourself be told anything. That fault would prove to be humanity's greatest gift." But the road to greatness was far from smooth. After graduation, Einstein couldn't find an academic position. He worked as a tutor, a teacher at a technical school, and eventually took a job at the Swiss Patent Office in Bern. Picture this: the man who would unlock the secrets of the universe was spending his days evaluating applications for new inventions. What's haunting to consider is how many other brilliant minds throughout history might have been lost in similar circumstances. How many potential Einsteins never got their chance? How many revolutionary discoveries died in patent offices, teaching positions, or factory floors? Einstein himself came dangerously close to abandoning physics altogether. In 1902, financially desperate and professionally rejected, he seriously considered taking a job selling insurance. The man whose theories would reshape reality nearly became an insurance salesman instead. 1905. Einstein is 26 years old, working 6 days a week at the patent office, married to his first wife, Mileva, and caring for their infant son. By any reasonable measure, he should have been too exhausted, too distracted, too overwhelmed to change the world. Instead, he published 5 papers that fundamentally altered humanity's understanding of reality itself. But here's the chilling part. These weren't papers that were destined to be written by someone, somewhere. These were insights so revolutionary, so far ahead of their time, that many of Einstein's contemporaries couldn't even comprehend what he was proposing. The first paper proved the existence of atoms and molecules through his explanation of Brownian motion. At the time, many respected scientists still doubted that atoms actually existed. Without Einstein's work, we might have spent decades longer arguing about the basic building blocks of matter. The second paper introduced the photoelectric effect, proving that light behaves like particles in certain situations. This discovery would later earn him the Nobel Prize and lay the groundwork for quantum mechanics. But more importantly for us today, it made possible every digital device you own. The third and fourth papers introduced special relativity, proving that space and time are not separate absolute entities, but are woven together into space-time itself. He showed that time can slow down, that objects shrink as they approach the speed of light, and that nothing can travel faster than light. The fifth paper contained the most famous equation in human history, E equals mc squared. This simple formula revealed that mass and energy are interchangeable, unlocking both the power of the atom and our understanding of how stars shine. But here's what keeps physicists awake at night. Without Einstein, how long would it have taken humanity to make these discoveries? Some historians argue we might still be waiting. The mathematical tools existed. The experimental evidence was accumulating, but no one else was asking the right questions. Einstein didn't just solve problems that already existed. He saw problems that no one else even knew were there. Let's travel to an alternate timeline, a world where Einstein never existed. What would be missing from your life right now? First, your smartphone would be impossible. GPS satellites orbiting Earth experience time slightly differently than we do on the surface, exactly as Einstein predicted with his theory of relativity. Without accounting for these relativistic effects, GPS would accumulate errors of about 6 miles per day. Your phone's navigation would be useless. The computer or device you're watching this on wouldn't exist either. The photoelectric effect that Einstein discovered is the foundation of all digital technology. No solar panels, no digital cameras, no LED lights, no modern electronics of any kind. Nuclear power? Forget about it. Without E equals mc squared, we wouldn't understand how nuclear reactions work. No nuclear medicine, no nuclear power plants, no understanding of how the sun actually produces its energy. We might still think the sun burns like a giant coal fire, But the losses go far deeper than technology. Without Einstein's insights into the nature of light and matter, we would never have developed lasers. No laser surgery, no fiber optic communications, no barcode scanners, no DVD players, no industrial cutting tools. Medical imaging would be primitive. MRI machines rely on understanding quantum mechanics and the behavior of matter that Einstein helped establish. CT scans depend on computational methods that grew out of his mathematical approaches. And here's perhaps the most frightening thought. Without Einstein's work on Brownian motion proving the existence of atoms, chemistry and biology would have developed completely differently. We might not understand DNA, proteins, or the molecular basis of life itself. But the intellectual losses would be even more profound. Einstein didn't just give us technologies, he gave us a completely new way of thinking about reality. He showed us that common sense can be wrong, that the universe is far stranger and more beautiful than our everyday experience suggests. Here's where Einstein's story becomes even more precarious, and where the alternate timeline becomes truly terrifying. Einstein was Jewish in an increasingly anti-Semitic Europe. By the 1920s, his fame made him a target. Nazi supporters disrupted his lectures, calling his theories Jewish physics. They burned his books and placed a bounty on his head. In 1933, when Hitler came to power, Einstein was lecturing in the United States. He never returned to Germany. But imagine if the timing had been different. What if Einstein had been just 10 years younger? What if he had still been in Germany when the Nazis began systematically murdering Jewish intellectuals? The man whose insights would prove crucial to defeating fascism might have died in a concentration camp. This isn't speculation. We know the Nazis targeted Jewish scientists specifically. They destroyed entire academic careers, scattered brilliant minds to the wind, and murdered countless intellectuals whose contributions we'll never know. Einstein escaped by mere chance of timing and geography. In our alternate timeline where Einstein never existed, we have to ask, how many other potential Einsteins were lost to hatred, persecution, and systematic oppression? How much human potential has been destroyed by those who saw genius as a threat rather than a gift? Einstein himself was acutely aware of this tragedy. He once said, "I made one great mistake in my life when I signed the letter to President Roosevelt recommending that atom bombs be made. But there was some justification: the danger that the Germans would make them." The irony is staggering. The man whose equation E equals mc squared made nuclear weapons possible was also a lifelong pacifist who fled from the very regime those weapons would help defeat. But here's where our alternate history becomes complex. Science isn't just about individual genius. It's about collaboration, building on previous work, and the right ideas meeting at the right time. Some historians argue that Einstein's discoveries were inevitable, that Lorentz, Poincaré, Planck, and other brilliant physicists of the time would eventually have pieced together relativity and quantum theory without him. They point to the mathematical tools that already existed, the experimental anomalies that demanded explanation. But this view misses something crucial about how Einstein worked. He wasn't just solving mathematical puzzles. He was asking fundamentally different questions. Where others saw mathematical curiosities, Einstein saw profound truths about the nature of reality. Take the photoelectric effect. Other physicists had observed the phenomenon for years. They had the data, they had the mathematical tools, but they were trying to explain it using classical physics. Einstein was the first to realize that the problem itself required abandoning classical assumptions about the nature of light. This is why Einstein's absence would have been so catastrophic. It wasn't just that he solved difficult problems. He identified which problems were actually worth solving. Consider general relativity, Einstein's greatest achievement. This theory emerged from his realization that gravity isn't a force pulling objects together, but the curvature of space-time itself. This insight was so radical, so counterintuitive, that it's difficult to imagine anyone else making the same conceptual leap. Without general relativity, we would never have understood black holes, the expansion of the universe, or the Big Bang. Modern cosmology simply wouldn't exist. We'd still be arguing about whether the universe is static and eternal, as most scientists believed before Einstein. The absence of Einstein would have created a cascade of missing discoveries that we can barely comprehend. Without his work on the equivalence of mass and energy, nuclear physics would have developed completely differently, if at all. We might never have understood stellar nucleosynthesis, how stars forge the heavy elements that make planets and life possible. The entire field of astrophysics would be stunted. Quantum mechanics, already strange enough, might never have achieved the mathematical sophistication it has today. Einstein's insights into the particle nature of light were crucial for early quantum theory, even though he later became uncomfortable with quantum mechanics' philosophical implications. His famous quote, "God does not play dice with the universe," reflected his deep unease with quantum uncertainty. But ironically, without his foundational work, quantum mechanics might never have developed to the point where such philosophical concerns could even arise. Space exploration would be impossible. The calculations needed to send spacecraft to other planets, to maintain satellites in orbit, to navigate through the solar system, all of these depend on understanding relativistic effects. Without Einstein, we might never have left Earth's surface, but perhaps most importantly, we would be missing the conceptual framework that allows us to think about the universe as a unified, comprehensible system. Einstein showed us that the same physical laws that govern falling apples also govern the orbits of planets and the behavior of light from distant stars. This unification of seemingly disparate phenomena, what physicists call elegance, has been the driving force behind every major scientific advance since Einstein. Without his example, science might have remained a collection of disconnected facts rather than becoming a coherent description of reality. But our exploration of this alternate timeline wouldn't be complete without considering the personal costs of genius and what we might have gained in a world without Einstein. Einstein's intense focus on understanding the universe came at enormous personal cost. His first marriage to Mileva Maric, herself a brilliant physicist, collapsed partly because of his obsessive dedication to his work. His relationship with his children was strained and distant. He once wrote, "I made one great mistake in my life when I married." In our alternate timeline, perhaps Mileva Maric would have had the space and support to make her own groundbreaking discoveries. Perhaps their sons would have had a more present father. Perhaps Einstein himself would have been happier, more emotionally fulfilled, even if scientifically less productive. This raises uncomfortable questions about the nature of genius and sacrifice. Do revolutionary discoveries require this kind of single-minded obsession? Are we celebrating intellectual achievement while ignoring its human costs? Einstein himself seemed aware of this tension. Later in life, he expressed regret about the personal relationships he had sacrificed for his work. He wrote, A person who has not made his great contribution to science before the age of 30 will never do so. But he also acknowledged that this drive for early achievement often came at the expense of a balanced life. In our world without Einstein, perhaps we would have developed different models of intellectual achievement. Perhaps we would have created systems that nurtured both scientific discovery and human flourishing, rather than demanding a choice between them. As we reach the end of our journey through this alternate timeline, we're left with questions that have no easy answers. Would humanity have eventually discovered Einstein's insights without him? Perhaps, but it might have taken decades or even centuries longer. And in a world facing climate change, nuclear weapons, and the need for new energy sources, time is something we can't afford to lose. Or perhaps, different minds would have asked different questions, leading us down entirely different paths of discovery. Maybe we would have developed technologies and understanding that we can't even imagine, because we've been so shaped by Einstein's particular way of seeing the universe. What's certain is that Einstein's existence was far more precarious than we usually acknowledge. A different decision by his parents, a different response to his early struggles, a slightly different timing with regard to World War II, any of these could have erased him from history. This fragility of genius should terrify and inspire us in equal measure. It should terrify us because it shows how easily we could lose the insights that make civilization possible. It should inspire us because it reminds us that extraordinary potential might exist anywhere, in anyone, at any time. Every child who struggles in school might be the next Einstein. Every person working in obscurity might be on the verge of a breakthrough that changes everything. Every individual who thinks differently, who asks uncomfortable questions, who refuses to accept conventional wisdom, might be holding the key to humanity's future. The question isn't really what would have happened if Einstein never existed. The question is, what Einsteins exist today that we're not recognizing, not supporting, not giving the chance to flourish? And perhaps most importantly, in a world that increasingly values conformity and quick answers, are we creating the conditions for the next Einstein to emerge? Or are we inadvertently ensuring that genius remains hidden, that breakthrough discoveries remain undiscovered, that the next revolution in human understanding never comes at all? The universe is still full of mysteries. Somewhere out there, the next Einstein might be struggling with homework, working a mundane job, or asking questions that everyone else thinks are silly. The future of human knowledge might depend on whether we're wise enough to recognize them before it's too late. If you found this journey through an alternate timeline as fascinating as we did, subscribe for more explorations of history's most pivotal moments. And remember, the next Einstein might be closer than you think. The question is, will we be ready to recognize them when they appear?